So let me set a quick context for the content of this plenary. And I swear, I saw this film a number of months ago now, and I still don't know whether I can really verbalize everything I think about in relation to it, and I'm not very clear on some points in it and how I feel about things in it. We screened this movie last night. How many people went? So those hands raised, there were about 500 people there last night, 450 maybe, to watch this full film last night, Underwater Dreams. And I got to say, I thought the reception last night was powerful in terms of the messaging in the movie. And so I'm not going to say much about it because I'm going to introduce two people that are integral to the movie in a second. But I will say this, that when we talk about mobilize and getting a voice out on things, I do think that film has the ability to say things sometimes that human beings can't. Somehow, there's a way it resonates and people absorb the message that it's really powerful. And when I watched this movie, that's what happened to me. I thought I was going to be just totally inspired, and I was left, scratching my head with as many questions and in some ways feeling torn about the story being told. But at the end of the day, what happens in this community based on the story, which you're going to see the trailer of, is so awe-inspiring. We just thought, you know what, we couldn't not bring this to Gear Up, because it's so much really about what Gear Up is about, and that's changing communities. And the gentleman we're about to bring up in a second really is at the heart of that sort of epicenter of changing his community and what he did, and I'm not sure he even knew he was doing it at the time. So with that said, Underwater Dreams is a story about four kids, actually more than four students in Arizona who entered an underwater robotics competition and in high school and beat out the top colleges in the country, including MIT. But it was the impact of what they did that is so inspirational. And so we are going to show you two quick clips. The first, and I saw this screened at the Motion Picture Association in DC. That same week, it was screened at the White House. And so the first clip we're going to show you is a message from President Obama. Yeah. That President Obama. About why he thinks the film is so powerful. And then the second clip, the second video is actually about a 2.5 minute trailer of the film itself. So I urge you to take a look.
Hi everybody. You're about to watch a story about 4 students from Phoenix and a robot named Stinky. As you'll see though, it's actually a story about dreamers. It's a story of parents who came to this country believing that America is a place where no matter who you are, what you look like, or where you come from, you can do great things if you try. It's a story of determined young people who prove that science is for all of us. And it's a story of the school that helps them succeed, the community that rallies around them, and of the countless women and men, young and old, who they inspire. Their story is an American story. From the telephone to the search engine, from the polio vaccine to the space program, immigrants and their children have made extraordinary contributions to our country. They've kept us on the cutting edge. And that's still true today. Just ask Stinky. So I hope you enjoy this true story of invention and immigration, and I hope that after the lights come up and the credits roll, we'll all be inspired to do what we can to keep the American dream alive and accessible to all. Not just today, but for generations to come. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
They were a ragtag robotics team. 4 teenage boys from Phoenix, Arizona, decided to build an underwater robot, just for the hell of it. They took their robot and headed west to a sophisticated underwater robotics competition, up against the likes of MIT.
When we arrived at the competition, I was pretty nervous.
The other robots were like pieces of underwater jewelry.
We looked like the carnival had arrived. Just a raggedy-ass robot.
We were way over our head.
We noticed water in the case.
We're telling it to go forward, and the robot's going sideways. And I'm thinking,
Oh my God.
oh, We're out of the competition.
We were all having problems.
My idea was a tampon. This was a do or die situation.
MacGyver would be proud.
But the robot was only the beginning.
Who are these punks from nowhere that had no business doing what they do? You know, what is that?
They broke the mold and said, catch me if you can.
It wasn't about building a robot.
The 2004 team showed us that it was possible.
No matter what background you come from or where you are, you can do what you set your mind to do.
Kids at Carl Hayden High School become leaders.
They have a sense of social responsibility that was cultivated as being part of this team.
Knowing you can't do something just because you're lacking a piece of paper is kind of devastating.
What the robotics did to me is to show me, even though that I don't know where to start, I can solve the problem.
We should empower as many people as we can to build great things.
These boys laid a foundation. They inspired those behind them to see that possibilities could exist, to be courageous, to dream, and to fly.
I want to solve the energy crisis.
Make a difference in my community.
Be a computer engineer.
Develop the renewable energy infrastructure.
The next generation of autonomous vehicles.
And make them go faster. Prosthetics for kids.
Discover like alien life.
I want to be an astronomer.
Now, at the end of this session, you're going to hear about access to this film. If you didn't get a chance to see it, you're going to get a chance to see it and potentially use it in your communities. The next person I'm going to bring up here, it said it's a Mary Mazzio gig. Mary has really fast become a friend more than anything in some ways every time I see her now. And if you look at her bio, which is in the back of the program, it says a couple of things. One, that she was in the Olympics as a rower. She was a partner in a law firm, and now is a acclaimed documentary filmmaker. So when I read that, I thought, fake. No way someone did all that in one lifetime. But she has. And it's pretty amazing that she decided to tell this story. And so I want to bring up here Mary Mazzio.
Fake. Thank you so much, my friend. Gear up. In the house. How's everybody doing today? I got to tell you, I am so honored to be here. I mean, we are able to tell the story of what you do day in and day out. And you are the guys, you are the people that are doing all the hard work. And for that, I'm so humbled to be here. I mean, and Lorenzo's going to come up in a minute. We've been everywhere with this movie. The Stephen Colbert show, for which, by the way, I had sweat stains, you know, because they say to you, they said, okay, I went on with Oscar, and they said, I said, now, Stephen won't go after Oscar, right? And they said, oh no, he's a father. And they said, but you, on the other hand. And if you've seen Stephen Colbert, you'll know that he can eviscerate you. So I had, you know, was nerve-wracked for like 24 hours. But to be here with you, the people that are doing it day in and day out, you are what is fueling these children. And there is extraordinary talent throughout this country, and you are at the front lines of it. So I thank you. I'm just going to give a quick little recap of sort of the impact that the film is having. Then Lorenzo's going to come up, and then I think we're going to have a conversation with Ranjit. But this is really at the heart of this. It's about extraordinary educators that inspired students, and in the process, change the culture of their own school. We've seen this film, and one of my producers was Jeb Bush Jr. And when a friend introduced, I said, you got to tell him I swing for the other team. I'm to the left, and he's not. And he came in, and we could not have had a better working partnership, and it was amazing. And I think when the film came out, it reflected, we started with screenings with the Center for American Progress, right, a very well-respected liberal left think tank, and then Forward.us, Mark Zuckerberg's company, got in on the act, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting, we've got business interests. And then I get a call from the US Chamber of Commerce, and they said, we want to join the party. And I said, I've gone down the rabbit hole now, right? Like, this is phenomenal. And the backdoor conversation between these groups, so, the Center for American Progress, they're like, well, those people are like hammering the White House on Obamacare. And my response was, yeah, they are, but how about this issue? And then we got another call from Libre, and Libre is a group funded by the Koch brothers. I heard a big from Sylvia here in the front. But the remarkable, right, hold her up. But the remarkable thing was the film was made. Nobody could change the message. And the fact that we were attracting people from the right and the left, the most remarkable thing that I witnessed myself, CEO of a conglomerate, worldwide conglomerate, we're screening the film in Aspen, and he comes up to me and he said, Mary, I'm looking at your film, and I see these 4 guys, and they get their, jeans around their waist, and I'm wondering if maybe they kind of look like gang members. And I thought, I'm not quite sure where this conversation's going to go. But he said, by the end of the movie, I loved these boys like my sons. What can I do to help? And so I think for us, and Lorenzo in particular, the power of what these young men did, the light that they shone in their own community, and we've just taken that story and that inspirational story, and we're just putting it on a larger platform so that others can be inspired. We partnered with NBC Universal, which was really fascinating. It was the first time they had ever done a telecast simultaneously in Spanish and English with MSNBC, Telemundo, and Mundos. And I think to date, one of the things I'm most proud of is, as Ranjit mentioned, the White House called. And I don't think I have time for it, but I have a really hilarious story about meeting the president, who I thought I would never meet, and he met the young men as well. But the White House then called, so they had us there a number of times over the year, so I knew they loved it, and I said, so when are we going to do a screening at the White House? And they said, well, the president's executive order has to pass, so they were, there was some political timing, and then they called me and they said, oh, guess what, we're ready to do a screening at the White House. And I said, I'm ready, the boys are ready, when? And they said, well, when the White House gets involved, we like to see activity. And I said, now, what kind of activity? And they said, do you think you can raise some money to really put real money in neighborhoods towards STEM education for underrepresented students? And I said to myself, oh my God, it's so hard for me to raise money for my own projects. And I'm thinking 10,000. And they're like, do you think you can raise 5 million? I said, I don't know, but we were working with 3M at the time. We did a pilot program where 3M funded, with our friends at First Book, who I know are here, gifting the film, the educational version, to several Title I schools. And so I said to 3M, what do you think? What can you do? And okay, we'll get back to you. And meanwhile, we're talking to Televisa about a program in Mexico, and they said, oh, well, we're thinking about a $4 million initiative for Latinas in STEM, but it's not robotics. Does that count? So I'm like, yeah, it counts. I call the White House, and the White House like, yeah, that totally counts. And then all of a sudden, 3M is in for $15 million. The CUNY, and what we've done with the CUNY system, which has 500,000 primarily first-generation immigrant kids, a huge population at CUNY. CUNY says, well, we're in for $35 million for these, and oh my God. I call up MIT. MIT's like, wait, we might be able to go to the White House? And I said, absolutely. MIT comes in, $9 million in new money specifically for underrepresented students. And so all of a sudden, to date, we have raised almost $100 million in commitments. But, and when Lorenzo comes up in one moment, I think one of the singular moments that reduced me to tears, Lorenzo and I, and actually I think all the boys, I think we were all there, we were in California about 3 months ago, and I got a call saying, you know, we're gonna have a screening with 1,000 middle schoolers. Can we have you out, and would you bring the boys, and would you like to come? And I said, did you say middle schoolers? 1,000? Okay, now, I've been doing this a long time. This is not a polite audience, right? Just because you're going to show up, the polite clapping, right, that you get with adults because you show up, they kind of have to do that. These kids, right? So I am, just like with Colbert, sweat stains. I'm like, I've either missed the mark with these kids or, you know, totally screwed the pooch. From the opening logo, sorry, was that? Is that bad as coming from a feminist? I just thought, that just dawned on me. Anyways, these kids, you know, they were like elbowing each other, and the lights go down. From the opening logo, they start cheering, chomping, you know, stomping their feet, and at the end, a little girl raises her hand, and many of these children were the sons and daughters of migrant workers, of house cleaners, of construction workers, and she said, Mrs., I didn't think, because of my culture, that I could really do anything. She was about 12, and she said, but I'm a really strong person, and after seeing your movie, I think I can go do something big. I just want to let you people know. Is that unbelievable? And to hear that over and over again, teachers are writing in saying, you know, in what I couldn't have taught in 2 years, what our kids are learning. And it's really because you take these role models of these 4 young men, these educators, these are role models that are not articulated in our society. They're not. And when kids see this and they see themselves, and we're having this reaction, by the way, with kids of all ethnicities, right? Particularly first-generation immigrant children. When they see their story articulated and they say, wait, that guy can do it. Well, maybe I can. It's been personally extraordinarily humbling. So with that, I would love you to hashtag Underwater Dreams. Tell everybody you know. We're right now working with a very large foundation that prefers to go unnamed. I'm sure you can all figure it out. But they are funding NCLR, the National Council of La Raza, Dream.us, and Babson College. And next year, they're going to be doing a very deep dive in about 20 communities, particularly with parent engagement materials. And so for those of you in those 20 communities, I'm not sure which communities, we would love for you to bring your kids. We're going to be in Seattle in December. There's going to be community screenings, and so I urge you to either be in touch with us, me, at 50 Eggs, or check our website. And the film itself, many of you asked if it's available. We've committed with the White House to donate 50% of all proceeds back to Carl Hayden High School. We've actually, our second check to them is going to be for scholarships, and then once we reach a certain threshold, donations will then go to Dream.us to fund college scholarships. But if you come from a program where you cannot afford the educational version, again, please stay in touch with me, because we're having conversations with multiple corporate sponsors just on the effectiveness of the film, and so we may be in a position, again, to gift the film. The program with 3M 3M gifted 1,500 copies, and they flew off the shelves in like a nanosecond. So we're in discussions. So with that, I would love to call up my friend Lorenzo Centillon, who is a man who needs no introduction. Lorenzo has been traveling with the film, and the impact that he has had on young people, he is mobbed after screenings. I mean, I think when we went to see the 1,000 middle schoolers, they were hanging on his shoulders. They were, everywhere. But it was a sight to behold. So, Lorenzo Centillon.
So going into the project with Mary Mazzio has, opened up my eyes to understand that the impact that we had was more amazing than what we ever thought. And she did that for us. Being able to share our stories after 10 years has been just mind-boggling, because I wouldn't think that I'd be speaking to 1,800 guests at Gear Up in California, San Francisco. So it's just very, very humbling to be here and share my story, because you guys are the people that are gonna inspire everybody. You could share a story and have me go speak for you guys, So, I mean, in reality, our story is reflected all around the United States. And for me to share my story, it's because we need people like me that have been undocumented and unafraid to be able to share a story, just to inspire students, because they might not see something else that we might see. Thank you.
So we don't have much time. These plenaries are always too tight. And so I have to shift gears for a second, because I was really prepared to give Mary the Colbert treatment. But now I'm going to go a little more Oprah.
Except I'm not sweating.
Exactly, a little more Oprah. So I'm going to ask one question to just get people into, there's a couple of microphones right under the screens, if you can see them. We've got a couple of NCCEP staff staffing the microphones. And so what I want is just anybody in the audience to be able to ask any questions. I know a lot of people saw the movie last night. So as people think about what they may want to ask, I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to start with you, Mary. I imagine as a filmmaker, there's tons of stories that come your way. And so why did you pick this story to tell?
So somebody from the National Science, I've been actually trying to get funding from the National Science Foundation. And they said, here's this kind of cool story. This was about 8 years ago. And I read the story, and I thought, what an epic David and Goliath story. I mean, this is remarkable. Here you have kids that are invisible to many Americans, right? Look what they did. And when I called up the teachers, and I shared this story last night, the teachers were like, well, it's so nice that you called, but we're signing a deal with Warner Brothers. And so I said, oh, okay, that's really a shame. And every year I'd call, and every year Warner Brothers would re-up. And they were sort of following my career, and we had done some films that got some crazy press. And then after Tom Friedman wrote about one of our films, which was about largely urban youth and some of the great things they could accomplish, and Tom Friedman wrote about it, calling on President Obama to put it in every classroom in America. And then one of the teachers called me and said, wow, that's so cool. We're still tied up with Warner Brothers. So basically 18 months ago or 2 years ago, Warner Brothers inexplicably let their rights lapse. And so I jumped in, like, I've been following this forever, and got the rights. And then not 30 days later, I got a call from somebody from Lionsgate saying, we're about to make a feature film, and who the hell are you? So that's, but for that 30-day period, because a major studio would never have permitted a documentary, any kind of rights to be exploited. And so I feel so humbled that Lorenzo and the other young men and the teachers gave me the ability to tell this story, because none of us knew that it would be as sort of impactful and explosive as it ended up turning out. I mean, I sort of had an idea, because I always like work the angles, but none of us had any clue that it would rise to this level.
Great. And just so you know, this story was also actually made into a Hollywood film. I can't actually remember the name of it, but someone stood up at the end of the movie last night and said they'd seen both and that this one was so much better. And it's probably good that I can't remember the name. Do we have anybody at the mics? Spare parts.
So this is Robert Scott from the University of Michigan. I did see the film last night, and congratulations, it was tremendously moving. And I certainly understand the conflicted pieces as well. Even now I'm not sure if I thought it was a victory or not. But my question to you, Mary, is that Freddie's story, one of the teachers, Freddie's story, was also very powerful, and I felt sort of unfulfilled in hearing the tremendous choices that he had to make to be where he was to facilitate this. Have you thought about turning that into a secondary movie for teachers?
That's a great question. So, in the film, Freddie, of course, faces tremendous conflicts. He's got one child with autism, and he would go to school at 7 a.m. because robotics met right before school, and then the kids were building their robots afterwards. So he was not getting home until 8 o'clock at night. And then he would travel with the team, and like many of you, right, just you're putting in extraordinary hours for kids who really need the hours. We have not yet talked with Freddie about a secondary film, but that's actually a great idea. For us, it's always a challenge of how these projects are going to be funded. And we got very, very, very lucky. The Bezos Family Foundation came in. The Loriam Tisch Illumination Fund, she owns the Giants with her brothers. And a couple of other people came in. But for that commitment, this film never would have been made. And I think they understood the power of the story and thought it was so important. And so part of it is you're meshing philanthropy, right, with storytelling in a way to be impactful. So it's a great idea, and I can see what kind of funding we can get for it. But thank you for your observation.
And as we go to the next mic, I would just say, Mary, there's probably a ton of stories in here that you could probably tell and document for us as well. And we'll give you the rights pretty cheaply.
Hi, thank you for your film. My name is Ramiro Medrano. I'm a family involvement coordinator from Watsonville, California, which is about an hour and a half south from here. You said you would have something to fund some kind of parent engagement or involvement. What would that look like? How can I get in there and be a part of that?
So, great question. The curriculum for middle and high school students is actually, so the CUNY system drafted curriculum for first-generation college programs. So college readiness, they're using with high schoolers, they're using it with freshmen in a whole ESL, ESL classes, all kinds of applications. And by the end of 2015, I think they told me 10,000 kids will have seen the film and required classes. But right now, with this new grant money, Babson College, NCLR, and Dream.us, they're building middle and high school curriculum in both English and Spanish. That will be ready actually in 2 weeks. And we will be making accessible. The parent engagement piece is really interesting. We showed the film at a LULAC convention, and so many of the kids talked about wanting to show the film to their parents because many of these young people face sort of both cultural and family pressure, particularly those families that are barely surviving. They need an income from that young person. And so many of the kids have said, boy, if I can help convince my parents to let me graduate from high school or let me take 2 or 4 years for college, things can be different. So the parent engagement course is going to be, again, in English and Spanish. NCLR is in the process of drafting that curriculum. And what's going to happen is when we do the 20 community screenings in different places around the country. Parent workshops are going to happen concurrently with that, run by NCLR. So again, please email us, office at 50eggs, Andrew at 50eggs, my right-hand man, .com, and anybody that's interested, we will make sure to keep you in the loop as to what's happening. Thank you.
Lorenzo, can I ask you, in terms of sort of the impact on parents, what the impact of all of this has been? I mean, this happened 10 years ago, right? Both in terms of your family, your community, you know, how have you internalized everything that's sort of gone down in relation to this story?
Well, it honestly is a very eye-opening experience, because at the end of the day, I wasn't expecting to go to college initially, and I was able to go to college. We were faced with a very hard obstacle of going into politics and learning what it means to learn the laws and learn that if a politician says it's a law, it's not right. And in Arizona, we're like in a very red Republican state. So we had to face that. Even if we didn't want to, we still had to. So it pushes us to open up our eyes and fight for our rights, because our rights are being stripped off by the day. For example, Jan Brewer pushed a law that said if you have a work permit, you can't drive, and that's because you're not legally present. We went to court and sued her and won as a Arizona Dream Act Coalition. So being politically involved in the communities where we were raised, because Arizona is my home, people tell me, go back to Mexico. Well, my home is Arizona. Why do I want to go back to a country I don't even know? So we share our story because of that, because there's a lot of oppression in our community. And people say, well, you need to learn English. Well, maybe you need to learn Spanish, because we're a multicultural country. At the end of the day, sharing our story and having Mary Mazzio highlight one of the stories is a tremendous help, because now we have a sort of a Iron Man in disguise, you know, and that's a Mexican. So we're sharing stories that need to be heard, that need to motivate students to get ahead in life, because at the end of the day, there's engineering jobs that are not being filled, and we could possibly do that.
Yeah. I wonder what Batman is. We got a question.
Hi, I'm Jordan Cottrell from Madison Central in Richmond, Kentucky. And first of all, I'd like to start out by thanking you for the fabulous film. I'm tremendously inspired to move on and go further into my education. And my question to you, Mary, and also Lorenzo, through your strong, inspirational story, how has that in turn inspired you and also caused you to change and, I guess you could say, rise?
For me, I mean, I think this has been the biggest event I've done, which is very nerve-wracking, because I don't know what you guys are gonna think. And in reality, you guys probably know me more than I know myself by just watching the movie. So, I mean, I've been asked, why don't you go to have a higher education? And for me, it pushed me to be a better speaker, to share my story, to make really good points that will shine through the whole conversation and not keep you bored, because usually speakers are boring. So I don't want to be that person.
Because you're Iron Man.
Yeah, Mexican.
Iron Man.
Iron Man.
So that's a great question for me. It's inspired me incredibly, and it serves to remind me that talent is in places where so many Americans don't expect it or see it, and that it's incumbent upon me, given the opportunity and this sort of web, you know, like I said before, I'm working every angle. And so what's our next project? How do I continue to sort of push forward the ability to have dramatic social impact? And on a personal level, I've been thinking about, my own children and how privileged they are and how I need to continue to do more for those who are less privileged. And that's, I give away money, but, and my job is a huge giveaway because I used to be a lawyer. And so, you make a ton of money when you have a big mouth and you're a lawyer. And I have a big mouth, and I was a lawyer. So I gave up what I felt was a totally cush, like yuppified lifestyle, and I'm finding this so much more rewarding. But even with our success, and we've had extraordinary success, that I feel like I can do more. And I have kids all around the country like calling me now. And they're like, do you think you can help me get into college? And so I'm now calling like my alma mater. I'm like, I got a woman, you got to give her 4 years, right? So I am, and there's only so much one person can do, which is why I think having film as a platform, you can reach so many more. And so I'll continue to do this until the day I croak.
So I hate to do this. I'm going to take one last question just for the sake of time.
Oh, there's some
Hello.
Okay. Can we stay?
My name
All right, I'll take 2 questions.
Hello, my name is Rosa Harrison. I'm from Santa Ana, California, with the program Parent Promoting Education, Padres Promotores de la Educación. My question is for Lorenzo. What are the advice that you will give to the teachers and to the principals and to the staff or the school, how they can communicate with the parents so we can be a team and help all the undocumented students and all the students? How can we do it?
Well, great question. It's a very good question and a very big question for me too. But actually, I think that in reality, there is no conversation with students and parents, first of all. So maybe that needs to change to actually start communicating and engaging the parents. And I think we would do that through students. Because you could talk to the students and have a conversation with the student. Maybe the student can motivate the parent to come over and have a conversation with the parent. And you have a dialogue between parent, teacher, and student. Bridging the gap has been, I think, very difficult because parents, a Hispanic parent or any parent, maybe has 2 jobs or maybe is a single parent and they need to take care of the family. So finding the time where you guys all can meet, and that might be during the weekend. So it's just thinking of strategical ways of doing it. I think it's a very big question for me because I'm not a parent. I'm a parent, but also I haven't had that experience. But I do know that when I have my child go to school, I'm gonna make sure that if anything needs to be changed in school, it's gonna happen. So educating parents, students, and teachers, all working collectively to have a conversation and dialogue to engage one another.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tyler Chantin Kononi. I'm from Hilo, Hawaii. My question is for Renzo, actually. I was wondering what drove you guys, like your team, before you guys won, to pursue this and try to win or just have that experience?
That's a really good question too. I think that what drove us overall has been the fact that we weren't competing, we were learning. And even at that time, the teacher was able to level with us, and we were all teaching each other. So the teacher was not the teacher, he was a student with us. And that's what made it, I think, even it elevated our learning too, because now we want to educate the teacher of what he was saying. You know, I beat you to this, could I show you this? And you would be excited about teaching the teacher what you did or what you learned or what you researched. And at that time, honestly, it was just the fact that we were learning together. We weren't competing. We weren't going for MIT and telling them or knowing that we're gonna. I didn't even know who MIT was, for crying out loud. It doesn't, and it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, even if I wanted to go to MIT, why would I want to go to a school where I beat, MIT anyways? So I could run a school at, run a course in MIT and teach people how to build ROV still. Anyways, so that's the thing. We were learning. Overall, it was the fact that we were able to set our differences aside between the students, knowing that we wanted to learn, and for the next year, the teachers or the team to actually compete. Here's one more thing. We didn't beat MIT once. We did it 3 times overall. And that's why I said, why do I want to go to MIT?
Maybe you should work at MIT and teach. So with that, I know we could go on forever. Event management is crazy, and we've got events after this. And so before we close out here, and I have you sort of thank these 2 individuals, I just want to check. We have a video to exit on, right? So every day, we have 120 Gear Up Youth here as part of the Youth Congress. And so we were so moved by this story and the medium of film that every day until you hear from them on Wednesday morning, they're sending you a little film from what they're experiencing here in San Francisco as a cohort, a leadership cohort. So as we close out, only after we thank Mary and Lorenzo in a second, you're going to watch a short video as we exit the room on what they've been doing for the last 18 hours or so now. So with that said, I just want to have you join me in thanking Mary and Lorenzo for what they've done here.